Commander Vexistar stared at the data screen with growing boredom. Another star system. Another collection of planets spinning uselessly around their sun. The yellow star was nothing special. Medium size, middle age, sitting alone in the empty space between the Empire's outer territories. His survey ship had been mapping this region for 3 months now, and every system looked the same. "Anything worth reporting?" asked his second officer, Kreldon. Vextar shook his head. "Same as always. Gas giants, rock balls, ice chunks. Nothing the Empire needs." He was about to move on to the next system when something caught his eye. "Wait, pull up Planet 3 again." The screen showed a blue and green world. Water and land masses covered its surface. Clouds moved across the continents. It looked alive. "Life signs?" Vexter asked. "Confirmed," replied the sensor officer. "Basic atmosphere. Oxygen-nitrogen mix. Temperature range suitable for most known life forms. But sir, there's something else." "Show me." The officer's fingers moved across his console. New data appeared on the screen. Electromagnetic signatures. Organized patterns. "It looks like communication signals." Vextar leaned forward. In his 20 years of service, he had seen many worlds with life. Most had plants and animals. Some had primitive creatures that could use tools. But signals meant intelligence. It meant a species that could think and build and talk to each other. "Are you sure these are artificial?" "Yes, sir. The patterns are too regular to be natural. And sir, there's more. We're detecting nuclear energy signatures. Small ones, but they're there. Nuclear energy. That put these creatures at least 1,000 years ahead of simple tool use. They were splitting atoms. They had learned to harness the power of stars, even if only in small amounts." "Any signs of space travel?" The sensor officer worked quietly for several minutes. "Primitive chemical rockets. They've put some small objects into orbit around their planet. Nothing that could reach us, but they're trying." Vextar sat back in his command chair. This was interesting. A species that was just beginning to reach into space. The Empire had protocols for this situation. First contact procedures, evaluation guidelines, decisions about whether to invite them to join the Empire or simply conquer them. "Begin long-range observation," he ordered. "I want to know everything about these creatures before we make any decisions." For the next 6 months, Vextar's team watched the third planet. They intercepted signals and slowly learned the inhabitants' languages. They observed their cities and their wars. They studied their technology and their culture. The species called themselves humans. They lived on a world they named Earth. They were divided into many different groups that often fought each other. They had just over 7 billion individuals scattered across their planet's surface. "They're violent," reported Intelligence Officer Zareth during one of their daily briefings. "Constantly at war. They fight over land, resources, beliefs, even the color of their skin. In the last 100 of their years, they've had 2 massive global conflicts that killed millions. But they're also curious," added Science Officer Meltar. "They explore everything. They've mapped their entire planet. They've begun to understand the basic laws of physics. They've even sent machines to other planets in their system." Vextar studied the reports. The humans were a puzzle. They seemed smart enough to build nuclear weapons, but not smart enough to stop fighting each other. They had the technology to reach space, but spent most of their energy on Earthbound conflicts. "What's your recommendation?" he asked his officers. "They're too primitive to be useful," said Zareth. "Their technology is thousands of years behind ours. Their society is chaotic. They can't even unite their own planet. If we need workers, we have dozens of more advanced species we can recruit or conquer." "I agree," said Meltar, "but I recommend we keep watching them. They're developing fast. In another 1,000 years, they might become interesting." Vextar nodded. That made sense. The Empire was patient. They could wait. "Prepare a report for High Command. Recommend continued observation with no contact." But when Vextar tried to file his report, something strange happened. The communication system asked for special authorization codes. It wanted security clearances he didn't have. It was treating this routine survey report like classified military intelligence. "Kreldon, have you ever seen this before?" he asked his second officer. Kreldon examined the screen. "No, sir. This level of security is usually reserved for threats to the Empire. Major enemy movements, new weapon technologies. Why would it apply to a primitive species on the edge of nowhere?" Vextar tried different approaches, but the system wouldn't accept his report without higher authorization. Finally, he sent a message directly to Fleet Command asking for instructions. The reply came back within hours, which was unusual for routine survey matters. She was signed by Admiral Krexval himself, one of the Empire's most senior commanders, Commander Vextar. Your discovery of the Sol system and its inhabited third planet is noted. You are hereby ordered to establish a permanent monitoring station at the edge of the system. Maintain constant observation of the species known as humans. Under no circumstances are you to make contact with them or allow them to detect your presence. This order comes directly from the Imperial throne. Any violation will result in immediate court-martial and execution. Vextar read the message 3 times. The Imperial throne. The Emperor himself was interested in these primitive humans, but why? He tried to access the Imperial archives to learn more about previous encounters with this species. Maybe the Empire had dealt with humans before, but every file related to the Sol system was classified above his security level. All he could see were reference numbers and dates, some going back over 2,000 years. 2,000 years. That was impossible. Humans had only discovered nuclear energy in the last century. They had only reached space in the last few decades. How could the Empire have files about them from 2,000 years ago? Sir? Kreldan was looking at him with concern. Your orders? Vextar made his decision. Orders were orders, especially when they came from the throne. We're building a monitoring station. Long-range sensors, communication equipment, everything we need to watch these humans without them knowing we're here. And Kreldan? Yes, sir? Not a word about this to anyone outside the senior staff. Something about these humans has the Emperor's attention, and I have a feeling we don't want to know why. As his crew began building the hidden station, Vextar watched the blue and green planet spinning peacefully in the distance. The humans went about their daily lives, completely unaware that the largest empire in the galaxy was watching their every move. They fought their small wars and built their simple machines and dreamed their primitive dreams of reaching the stars. They had no idea that somewhere in the cold space beyond their furthest planet, alien eyes were watching and waiting. They didn't know that their very existence was important enough to require direct orders from an emperor who ruled 12 star systems, and they certainly didn't know that those orders came with a warning that would have chilled their blood. Do not awaken them. But Vextar was beginning to suspect that someone, somewhere in the Empire's long history, had learned what happened when you woke up the humans. And whatever it was, it had been bad enough to make an emperor afraid. 300 years had passed since Commander Vextar built the monitoring station. The humans had changed dramatically in that time. Their technology had advanced at a speed that amazed the Zephyrian observers. They had colonies on their moon and on the red planet they called Mars. Their ships were crewed by Empire standards. But they worked. Commander Zalketh was the latest in a long line of officers assigned to watch the Sol system. Like his predecessors, he found the duty boring. The humans were still primitive. They still fought among themselves, though less than before. They were still thousands of years behind the Empire's technology. Sir, we have a problem, announced Lieutenant Voron from the sensor station. Zalketh looked up from his daily reports. What kind of problem? A human ship. It's heading this way. That got Zalketh's attention. The monitoring station was positioned at the very edge of the Sol system, far beyond the humans' normal travel range. How far out? 3 days at their current speed. It's one of their exploration vessels. They call it Pioneer 7. Zalketh frowned. The humans had been sending robotic probes to the outer reaches of their system for decades. But this was the first manned ship to come this far. Will they detect us? Not if we stay quiet and keep our shields up. But sir, if anything goes wrong, Zalketh understood. 3 centuries of secret observation could be ruined by one curious human ship. Maintain silent running, no active sensors, no transmissions. We wait until they leave. For 3 days they watched the human ship approach. It was small and fragile looking, held together by what appeared to be prayers and determination. The humans inside had no idea they were being observed by a vessel that could destroy their entire planet. Pioneer 7 stopped just a few thousand kilometers from the monitoring station. The humans began taking readings of the local space. They deployed small sensor probes. They were mapping the edge of their system, probably looking for resources or just satisfying their endless curiosity. Everything was going according to plan until junior technician Relmos made a mistake. He was supposed to be monitoring the humans' communications, but he accidentally activated a targeting scanner instead. For just 2 seconds, the station's military sensors locked onto Pioneer 7. 2 seconds was enough. Sir, Voran's voice was sharp with panic. The humans just went to full alert. They're scanning everything. They're sending emergency transmissions back to Earth. Zalketh felt his blood turn cold. What are they saying? They detected our scanner sweep. They know something is out here. Sir, they're demanding we respond. On the main screen, Pioneer 7 looked tiny and helpless, but Zalketh could see its weapon systems coming online. Primitive nuclear missiles, barely powerful enough to scratch his ship's paint. The humans were preparing to fight something they couldn't see and couldn't understand. Sir, incoming transmission from the human vessel, reported the communications officer. Let me hear it. A human voice filled the bridge, speaking in the language they called English. The translation system rendered it into Zephyrian. Unknown vessel, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earthship Pioneer 7. We know you are there. We detected your scanner sweep. Please respond. Zalketh said nothing. 300 years of secret observation, 300 years of following orders to never make contact, all ruined by one technician's mistake. The human voice came again, calmer but more determined. Unknown vessel, we are not hostile. We are explorers from the third planet of this system. We wish to establish peaceful contact. Should we respond, sir? Asked the communications officer. No, maintain silence, but Captain Chen was persistent. For 6 hours she continued trying to make contact. Her messages grew more detailed, more sophisticated. She began transmitting mathematical sequences, scientific data, even music and art from human culture. She was doing everything right for a first contact situation. Finally, Zalketh made a decision that would change the galaxy forever. Open a channel. The communications officer stared at him. Sir, your orders specifically state, my orders didn't account for this situation. The humans know we're here. Continuing to hide serves no purpose. Zalketh straightened in his command chair. Open the channel. Channel open, sir. Captain Chen, this is Commander Zalketh of the Zephyrian Empire Monitoring Station. We receive your transmissions. The response from Pioneer 7 came immediately. Commander Zalketh, we greet you in peace. We have many questions. And they did have questions. Over the next several hours, Captain Chen and her small crew proved that humans were far from primitive when it came to gathering information. They asked about Zephyrian technology, territory, government, military capabilities, and intentions with a precision that impressed even Zalketh. When Chen asked how long the Empire had been watching Earth, Zalketh hesitated before answering truthfully. 300 years. 300 years, Chen repeated. And in all that time you never thought to introduce yourselves? We were ordered to observe only. Your species was classified as developing. Developing. There was something in Chen's voice that Zalketh couldn't identify. And now? Now the situation has changed. Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked the question that would echo through history. Commander, what does your empire want from humanity? Zalketh gave the standard answer that had worked on hundreds of species. The Zephyrian Empire offers protection and prosperity to all civilized worlds. In exchange, we ask for loyalty, tribute, and cooperation. Tribute, Chen said. You mean you want us to pay you for the privilege of being conquered? We prefer the term joining the galactic community. And if we refuse? Zalketh had given this speech so many times he could recite it in his sleep. Refusal would be inadvisable. The Empire has significant military resources. There was another long silence from Pioneer 7. When Chen spoke again, her voice was different, harder. Commander Zalketh, please transmit our response to your superiors. No. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? No, we refuse your offer. We refuse to pay tribute. We refuse to be conquered. We refuse to submit to your empire. The answer is no. Zalketh blinked. In 3 centuries of service, he had never heard that word in response to the Empire's generous offer of protection. Species usually responded with gratitude, fear, or desperate attempts to negotiate better terms. They didn't just say no. Captain Chen, I don't think you understand the implications. Commander, I think you don't understand humans. Please transmit our response. No. And please inform your empire that any attempt to conquer Earth will be met with resistance. The transmission ended. Pioneer 7 began moving away from the monitoring station, heading back toward Earth at maximum speed. Zalketh sat in stunned silence. One word. No. Simple, direct, final. His communications officer was staring at him. "Sir, what are your orders?" Zalketh thought about 300 years of secret observation. He thought about his orders from the Imperial throne. He thought about the classified files that went back thousands of years. And he thought about the way Captain Chen had said that one word, "No," like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like she couldn't imagine any other answer. "Prepare an immediate report to Fleet Command," he ordered. "Priority Alpha classification. Tell them the humans know we're here. Tell them about the refusal. Tell them—" He paused, trying to find the right words. "Tell them that the humans said no and they meant it." As his crew prepared the transmission, Zalketh watched Pioneer 7 disappear into the darkness between stars. Somewhere on that small ship, Captain Chen was racing back to Earth with news that would change everything. The humans had been awakened. And somehow, Zalketh suspected that the Empire was about to learn why that had always been forbidden. Admiral Krexval read Commander Zalketh's report for the third time, his scaled features growing darker with each word. In his 40 years of military service, he had overseen the conquest of 17 star systems and the peaceful integration of 43 species into the Empire. Never once had he encountered a species that simply said no. "Get me a full tactical assessment of the Sol system," he ordered his staff. "I want to know everything about human military capabilities." The report came back within hours. It was almost laughable. The humans had a few dozen crude spacecraft, mostly used for cargo transport between their planets. Their weapons were primitive nuclear devices that posed no threat to modern military vessels. Their largest warship carried the firepower equivalent of a single Empire patrol boat. "Sir," said his aide, Captain Yurtel, "our analysts estimate that a single battlecruiser could pacify the entire system within days." Krexval nodded. That was what he had expected. "Prepare Battlegroup 7 for deployment. 3 cruisers, 12 destroyers, and support vessels. We'll make this a demonstration rather than a slaughter." Battlegroup 7 was more than enough firepower to conquer most civilized worlds. For humans, it was massive overkill. But Krexval wanted to make a point. When the Empire made an offer, it was accepted. Always. 3 months after Captain Chen's encounter at the monitoring station, Battlegroup 7 dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. They immediately began broadcasting surrender demands on all human communication frequencies. "This is Admiral Krexval of the Zephyrian Empire," the message began. "You have refused our generous offer of protection and prosperity. This was unwise. You will now surrender unconditionally. Lower your shields, power down your weapons, and prepare to receive Imperial representatives. Compliance will result in merciful treatment. Resistance will be met with overwhelming force." The human response came 12 hours later. It was not what Krexval expected. Instead of desperate pleas for mercy or frantic attempts to negotiate, Earth transmitted a simple message. "Admiral Krexval, this is General Martinez, speaking for the United Earth Defense Force. Your surrender demands are rejected. Any aggressive action against human territory will be met with appropriate response. You have entered our solar system without permission. You have 24 hours to withdraw." Krexval stared at the communication screen in disbelief. Did they just give us an ultimatum? "Yes, sir," replied Captain Yurtel. "They're demanding that we leave." "Sir," interrupted the sensor officer, "we're detecting movement throughout the system. Human ships are taking defensive positions." The tactical display showed the Sol system in real time. What Krexval saw there made him pause. In the 3 months since first contact, the humans had been busy. Very busy. Every space station in their system had been converted into a military outpost. Cargo ships had been retrofitted with weapons. Mining platforms on asteroids were now missile batteries. The human moon was covered with what looked like defensive installations. "How many ships are they fielding?" Krexval asked. "Approximately 200 combat vessels, sir. Most are converted civilian craft, but they're all armed. 200 ships." It was more than Krexval had expected, but still no match for his battle group. Each of his cruisers could handle 20 human vessels without difficulty. "Sir, incoming transmission from Earth," announced the communications officer. "Let me hear it." A human voice filled the bridge. Speaking with calm authority, "Admiral Krexval, this is President Williams. I'm told you represent something called the Zephyrian Empire. I want you to understand something about humans before you make any irreversible decisions. We are not a violent species by nature, but we are a stubborn one. We do not surrender. We do not submit. We do not kneel. If you want our world, you'll have to take it from us. And I promise you, Admiral, the cost will be higher than you expect. The transmission ended. Krexval sat quietly for a moment, considering his options. The humans were clearly delusional about their military capabilities, but their refusal to negotiate was troubling. In his experience, primitive species usually begged for mercy when faced with overwhelming force. All ships, battle stations, he ordered. We'll start with a demonstration. Target their lunar installations with limited force. Once they see what we're capable of, they'll reconsider. Battle Group 7 moved into attack formation. The human fleet took defensive positions around their homeworld. Hopelessly outmatched, but showing no signs of retreat. The first engagement began when a human destroyer fired on one of Krexval's scout ships. The primitive missiles barely scratched the scout's shields, but the message was clear. The humans would shoot first. Return fire, Krexval ordered. Disable that vessel. What happened next surprised everyone on the Imperial bridge. As the Zephyrian destroyer moved to engage the human ship, 3 more human vessels suddenly accelerated to ramming speed. They weren't trying to fight. They were trying to crash into the Imperial ship. Evasive maneuvers, shouted the destroyer captain over the communication channel. The Imperial ship avoided 2 of the ramming attempts, but the 3rd human vessel struck it amidships. Both ships exploded in a brilliant fireball that lit up the darkness of space. Sir, reported Captain Yurtel, his voice shaking slightly. We just lost the Dominator. The humans. They deliberately sacrificed their own ship to destroy ours. Krexval stared at the expanding debris field. They rammed us. They actually rammed us. More human ships were moving now, not in normal attack formations, but in kamikaze runs. They seemed to have no regard for their own survival. They threw themselves at Imperial vessels with reckless abandon, turning their ships into guided missiles. All ships maintain distance, Krexval ordered. Use long-range weapons only. But the humans had adapted to that tactic too. When Imperial ships tried to stay at safe distances, human vessels would accelerate toward them at maximum speed, forcing the Zephyrians to either retreat or risk collision. The battle raged for 6 hours. Krexval's forces had superior technology and firepower, but the humans had something the Empire had never encountered: complete disregard for self-preservation in service of a larger goal. When Imperial forces targeted the human lunar base, the humans detonated their own installations rather than let them be captured. When Zephyrian troops tried to board a human space station, the humans vented the entire station into space, killing everyone aboard. Sir, we're taking significant casualties, reported Captain Yurtel. We've lost 4 destroyers and the cruiser Vengeance. The humans have lost 40 ships, but they keep coming. Krexval watched his tactical display with growing horror. Every human ship that died took at least 1 Imperial vessel with it. They were turning warfare into mathematics. If they could maintain a 1-to-1 exchange rate, they would eventually win through sheer numbers. But it was more than that. It was the way they fought. No fear, no hesitation, no attempts to preserve their own lives. They fought like a species that had already accepted death and decided to make it count. Sir, the communications officer called out. Incoming transmission from the human fleet commander. Put it through. A woman's voice came across the channel. Admiral Krexval. This is Admiral Chen, Earth Defense Force. I believe you knew my mother, Captain Sarah Chen. She told you 3 months ago that humans would resist any attempt at conquest. Did you think we were bluffing? Admiral Chen, the daughter of the woman who had said no to the Empire. Admiral Chen, Krexval replied. Your resistance is admirable but futile. We have vastly superior forces. Do you, Admiral? You came here with 15 ships. You now have 10. We started with 200 ships. We now have 160. At this rate, we'll both be extinct in another few hours. The difference is we're fighting for our home. You're fighting for your ego. Krexval looked at his casualty reports. Chen was right. If this continued, he would lose his entire battle group. What do you propose? He asked. Withdraw from our system. Return to your empire. Tell them that Earth is not for sale, not for conquest, and not negotiable. Tell them that if they want a war with humanity, they'll get one. But it won't be the kind of war they're used to. Admiral Chen paused, then added, And Admiral, if you're smart, you'll recommend that your empire find someone else to bother. Because we're just getting started. Krexval stared at the tactical display. 10 Imperial ships versus 160 human vessels. Superior technology versus desperate courage. An ancient empire versus a species that refused to admit defeat. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Krexvoll gave an order he had never expected to give. All ships, withdraw to safe distance. We're returning to Empire space. As Battlegroup 7 retreated from the Sol system, Krexvoll began composing his report to High Command. How do you explain to your superiors that you've been defeated by a primitive species? How do you describe an enemy that turns suicide into strategy? He looked one last time at the blue and green planet that had humiliated the Imperial fleet. Somewhere down there, humans were already preparing for the next battle, already planning new ways to turn their weaknesses into weapons. Admiral Krexvoll had conquered 17 star systems, but he had never faced an enemy like this. An enemy that made defeat more costly than victory. He began his report with a single recommendation. Sen Emperor Thexeron read Admiral Krexvoll's report in the silence of his private chambers. The golden walls of the Imperial Palace seemed to close in around him as he absorbed the impossible truth. A primitive species had defeated an Imperial battle group. Summon the War Council, he commanded his aide. Full mobilization protocols. I want every available ship, every general, every weapon at our disposal. The War Council met within hours. Around the massive crystal table sat the Empire's greatest military minds. Admiral Krexvoll, General Vextar the Conqueror, Fleet Marshal Zalram, and a dozen other officers who had never known defeat. Explain to me, the Emperor said quietly, how 15 modern warships lost to wooden clubs and stone knives. Admiral Krexvoll straightened. Your Majesty, the humans are not what we expected. They fight without regard for casualties. They use suicide tactics. They turn every defeat into a weapon against us. Suicide tactics, repeated General Vextar with contempt. The desperate flailing of a doomed species. Give me the 7th Fleet and I'll show these humans what real warfare looks like. No, said the Emperor. We will not underestimate them again. Marshal Zalram, I want the complete Imperial Navy deployed to the Sol system. 500 ships, the full might of the Empire. Marshal Zalram bowed. Your Majesty, that seems excessive for one primitive world. The Emperor's eyes glowed with cold fury. Admiral Krexvoll lost 5 ships to primitives with nuclear weapons. I will not risk further embarrassment. Crush them completely. 2 years passed while the Empire assembled its massive fleet. 2 years that the humans used wisely. When the Imperial Armada finally arrived at the Sol system, they found something that defied belief. The humans had transformed their entire solar system into a fortress. Every asteroid was a weapons platform. Every moon was a military base. Every planet was surrounded by defensive installations. How is this possible? Whispered Marshal Zalram as he studied the tactical displays. 2 years ago, they had barely reached their moon. Now they have military installations throughout their system. The truth was both simple and terrifying. The moment Admiral Krexvoll's battle group had retreated, humanity had declared total war. Not against a specific enemy, but against the concept of conquest itself. Every nation on Earth had surrendered its sovereignty to a single military government. Every factory had been converted to weapons production. Every citizen had become a soldier. Every resource had been devoted to a single purpose, making their solar system unconquerable. They had learned to work together in ways that astonished the Zephyrian observers. Humans who had fought each other for thousands of years now cooperated with perfect unity. Religious differences were set aside. Political conflicts were forgotten. Racial divisions disappeared. They had become a single organism with a single goal: survival. Sir, reported the fleet intelligence officer, we're detecting approximately 5,000 human combat vessels, all of them armed with nuclear weapons, particle beams, and kinetic projectiles. 5,000 ships. The humans had built a navy larger than most Imperial member worlds possessed. Begin the attack, ordered Marshal Zalram. All ships, advance to bombardment range. The battle that followed would be remembered as the longest continuous engagement in galactic history. For 3 months, the Imperial fleet hammered human defenses while the humans fought back with desperate ingenuity. The Zephyrians had expected to overwhelm the humans with superior firepower. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that treated space itself as a weapon. Humans had seeded the approaches to their planets with millions of small mines. They had redirected asteroids to create moving barriers. They had turned their entire solar system into a maze of traps and ambushes. When Imperial forces attacked the human colonies on Mars, the humans evacuated the population and turned the planet's atmosphere into a weapon, igniting the methane in the air to create a planetary firestorm that destroyed the attacking fleet. When the Empire targeted the asteroid belt mining stations, the humans detonated the entire belt, creating a debris field that made space travel through the system nearly impossible. When Zephyrian troops landed on Earth's moon, they found it was hollow. The humans had mined out the interior and filled it with explosives. When the Imperial forces were deep inside the lunar tunnels, the humans detonated their own moon, killing every invader on it. They destroyed their own moon, reported Captain Yurtel, his voice hollow with shock. Millions of years of their world's history, gone just to kill our soldiers. Marshal Zalrum stared at the tactical display. Where Earth's moon had been, there was now only expanding debris. How many troops did we lose? The entire 3rd Marine Division, sir. 12,000 soldiers. 12,000 Imperial soldiers killed by humans willing to sacrifice their own moon. It was a level of commitment that the Empire had never encountered. The war dragged on. Every human victory cost them dearly, but every Imperial victory cost them more. The humans seemed to have an endless supply of ships, weapons, and volunteers willing to die for their cause, sir, reported the communications officer during the battle's 5th month. We're receiving reports from across the Empire. Other species are watching the war. Watching? White Marshal Zalrum was focused on coordinating an attack on the human shipyards orbiting Jupiter. They're broadcasting the battles, sir. The humans are transmitting everything to every corner of the galaxy. Our subject worlds are seeing humans fight Imperial forces to a standstill. Marshal Zalrum felt a chill run down his spine. What kind of reaction are they getting? Unknown, sir. But we're detecting increased communication traffic between our member worlds. Much of it encrypted. That was troubling news. For 1,000 years, the Empire's subject species had been quiet and obedient. They paid their tributes, followed Imperial law, and never caused trouble. The idea that they might be inspired by human resistance was disturbing. Sir, urgent message from the home fleet, announced the communications officer. There's been an uprising on Keltor Prime. The entire Keltoran defense force has revolted. They're demanding independence from the Empire. Marshal Zalrum's blood turned cold. Keltor Prime was one of the Empire's most important industrial worlds. If they lost it, sir, more reports coming in. Rebellions on Vextar 7, Mineral Station Theta, and the Zulmar colony worlds. They're all citing human resistance as inspiration. The truth was spreading across the galaxy like wildfire. For the first time in 1,000 years, subject species were watching their masters bleed. They were seeing the mighty Imperial fleet struggle against a single primitive world. They were learning that the Empire could be fought. Marshal, came Admiral Krexvol's voice over the communication channel. I'm receiving reports that the 6th Fleet has been deployed to suppress uprisings in the Beta Sector. The 8th Fleet is dealing with rebellion in the Outer Rim. We're fighting a war on 12 fronts now. Marshal Zalrum closed his eyes. The humans had done more than defend their world. They had started a galactic revolution simply by refusing to surrender. Sir, incoming transmission from Earth, reported the communications officer. Put it through. A human voice filled the bridge. Marshal Zalrum, this is President Williams. I understand you're having some trouble at home. Perhaps it's time we discussed terms. The Empire does not negotiate with terrorists, Marshal Zalrum replied. We're not terrorists, Marshal. We're just people who refuse to kneel, and apparently we're not the only ones. Your empire is falling apart while you waste ships trying to conquer one world that never wanted to be conquered in the first place. President Williams paused, then continued. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to withdraw from our system. You're going to return to your dying empire and try to hold it together, and you're going to leave humanity alone, forever. And if we refuse, then we'll keep fighting. And while we fight, the rest of the galaxy will keep watching. They'll keep learning. They'll keep revolting. Your choice, Marshal. Lose one world or lose an empire. Marshal Zalrum looked at his tactical display. 7 months of fighting had cost him 200 ships and 50,000 soldiers. The humans had lost thousands of vessels and millions of lives, but they kept fighting. And across the galaxy, other species were beginning to fight too. Marshal? President Williams was waiting for an answer. For the first time in his career, Marshal Zalrum gave the order that would end an empire. All Imperial forces, withdraw from the Sol system. Return to home sectors immediately. As the Imperial fleet retreated from human space, Marshal Zalrom understood what the classified files had been trying to warn them about for 2,000 years. Humans weren't dangerous because they were strong or advanced. They were dangerous because they were willing to die for their freedom, and their example made others willing to die for theirs. The Empire had awakened humanity, and humanity had awakened the galaxy to everything. 7 years after the first human ship encountered the Zephyrian monitoring station, Emperor Thexran stood alone in his throne room, watching his empire die. The great holographic display that had once shown 12 star systems under Imperial control now flickered with red warning lights. Rebellion after rebellion, world after world declaring independence, fleet after fleet defecting to join the growing alliance of free worlds. Your Majesty, came the voice of his aide from the doorway. The War Council requests an audience. Let them come, the Emperor said quietly. The council that entered was not the same group of confident generals who had once planned the conquest of humanity. Admiral Krexval's uniform was torn from recent battles. General Vextar walked with a limp from wounds received fighting rebels on the core worlds. Marshal Zalrum looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. Report, commanded the Emperor. Your Majesty, began Marshal Zalrum, the situation is critical. We have lost control of 8 star systems. The remaining 4 are under siege by coalition forces. Our fleets are scattered, fighting on dozens of fronts simultaneously. Coalition forces? Yes, Your Majesty. The humans have been organizing resistance movements across the galaxy. They've shared their military tactics, their technology, their strategies for asymmetric warfare. What started as isolated rebellions has become a coordinated galactic uprising. The Emperor turned to study the tactical display. Once loyal worlds now flew the banners of the Free Worlds Coalition. Species that had served the Empire for centuries now fought alongside human advisors, using human tactics to destroy Imperial forces. The Keltorans have completely adopted human ramming techniques, reported General Vextar. They've converted their entire merchant fleet into kamikaze vessels. The Zulmar have learned human guerrilla warfare and are using it to devastating effect in urban combat. The Vextarians have embraced the human concept of total war and mobilized their entire population for military service. Admiral Krexval stepped forward. Your Majesty, the humans didn't just defeat us militarily. They defeated us ideologically. They showed the galaxy that the Empire could be resisted, that freedom was possible, that dying for liberty was preferable to living in chains. And where are the humans now? Asked the Emperor. The answer came from an unexpected source. The throne room's communication system activated, and a familiar voice filled the chamber. We're right here, Your Majesty. Admiral Sarah Chen appeared on the main screen. She was older now, her hair gray from years of war, but her eyes held the same determination that had first challenged the Empire 7 years ago. Admiral Chen, said the Emperor, I assume you're calling to demand our surrender. Actually, no. I'm calling to offer you a choice. That surprised everyone in the room. For 7 years, the humans had shown no mercy to Imperial forces. They had fought with relentless determination, never giving quarter, never accepting anything less than complete victory. What kind of choice? The Emperor asked. The same choice you offered us 7 years ago. Surrender, and you'll be treated fairly. Continue fighting and face the consequences. Admiral Krexval stepped forward. Admiral Chen, the Empire has nuclear weapons capable of destroying entire solar systems. If we're facing total defeat, you'll use them? Chen's voice was calm. Go ahead, Admiral. Destroy our worlds. Prove to every species in the galaxy that the Empire's final response to rebellion is genocide. See how that works out for you. The Emperor understood the trap. If the Empire used weapons of mass destruction against rebellious worlds, it would only inspire more resistance. The humans had turned even the threat of annihilation into a weapon against their enemies. What are your terms? The Emperor asked. Complete dissolution of the Zephyrian Empire. All occupied worlds granted immediate independence. All Imperial military forces disbanded. All member species free to choose their own governments and alliances. And the Zephyrian homeworld will be left alone as long as it remains on its own world and minds its own business. We're not conquerors, Your Majesty. We never wanted to rule anyone. We just wanted to be free. Marshal Zalrom spoke up. Admiral Chen, What guarantee do we have that the Coalition won't seek revenge against Zephyrian civilians? The same guarantee we had when you came to conquer us, Chen replied. None. The difference is we're not interested in enslaving you. We just want you to stop enslaving others. The Emperor looked around the throne room that had been built to intimidate the representatives of subject worlds. Golden walls, crystal displays, marble floors, all designed to project imperial power and permanence. Now it felt like a museum to a dead civilization. How long do we have to decide? He asked. You don't, came a new voice from the communication system. This is General Martinez of the Coalition Liberation Fleet. We're currently in orbit around Zephyr Prime. Your planetary defenses have been neutralized. Your fleet has surrendered. This isn't a negotiation, Your Majesty. It's a notification. The Emperor walked to the great window that looked out over his capital city. In the sky above, alien ships hung like dark stars, vessels from dozens of species that had once bowed to imperial authority, now united under human leadership. Your Majesty, Admiral Chen's voice was gentler now. I know this is difficult, but your empire was built on the subjugation of others. It was always going to end this way, eventually. The only question was how much suffering it would cause before it fell. And what happens now? The Emperor asked. Now? The galaxy becomes what it should have been all along. Free worlds cooperating by choice instead of compulsion. Species developing at their own pace, following their own paths. No more tributes. No more forced loyalty. No more conquest. The Emperor turned back to his generals. Gentlemen, it appears our war is over. Your Majesty, said Admiral Krexval, the humans, they could have destroyed us completely. Why didn't they? The Emperor considered the question. For 7 years, the humans had fought with a ferocity that terrified the galaxy. They had sacrificed their own moon, turned their solar system into a weapon, and inspired a dozen species to rebellion. They had brought down an empire that had stood for 1,000 years, and now in victory, they were offering mercy to their enemies. Because, the Emperor said quietly, they're not us. 3 months later, the last imperial governor evacuated the last imperial world. The Zephyrian Empire, which had once ruled 12 star systems and billions of beings, was reduced to a single planet and a humbled population. The Free Worlds Coalition established its capital on a neutral world halfway between human space and the galactic core. Admiral Sarah Chen was elected as its first coordinator, though she insisted the position be temporary and democratic. In her inaugural address, Chen spoke to representatives from 47 species. We gather here not as conquerors or conquered, but as equals. The age of empires is over. The age of free worlds has begun. We will face challenges. We will have disagreements. We will make mistakes. But we will face them together, as partners, not as masters and slaves. On Earth, now mostly ruins from 7 years of total war, the surviving humans began the long process of rebuilding. They had paid a terrible price for their freedom. Billions of lives, their moon, most of their cities, and their innocence about the universe. But they had gained something more valuable, the knowledge that freedom was worth any price, and that their example could inspire others to pay it. In the years that followed, historians would debate what made humanity special. Some pointed to their technology, others to their tactics, still others to their unity in the face of extinction. But the truth was simpler than any of them imagined. Humanity's greatest weapon had never been their willingness to die for freedom. It was their ability to live for it, to sacrifice, to endure, to rebuild, and to teach others that slavery was a choice, not an inevitability. The galaxy had been awakened, and it would never sleep again. On a small monitoring station at the edge of what had once been human space, an automated message continued to broadcast on all frequencies, in every known language, to any who would enslave the free peoples of this galaxy. We are watching. We are ready. We will not kneel. We are humanity, and we have taught the stars to remember what freedom means. The message would play for another 1,000 years, long after the last human had died, long after Earth had been forgotten, a reminder to any future empire that might rise from the ashes of the old. There was only one rule that mattered in the galaxy now. Do not awaken the people. Any people. Ever again, your empire is now dust,